Good evening. This is Monday Night Live. 52 times a year, we get to celebrate our recovery and our life together here, like this, on the Recovery 2.0 Monday Night Live sessions. And whether it's me or another teacher, the idea is to create a forum for the exchange of powerful ideas every Monday night, and also to create a place where we can come together as a community in celebration of our lives, of our recoveries, in recognition of our challenges, in honor of all of our difficulties, and generally speaking, to show up as examples of victory, which everybody here is. I wonder if you realize it. I wonder if you realize that. So I'm going to tell you a story. This came to me this week. You know how it is, like, I never know in advance, really, what I'm going to talk about when we do these sessions. It's usually during the week before, some kind of thought comes in, some kind of download. And it occurs to me in that moment that I want to explore that. And so I want to explore grace with you. I want to explore this idea of the glance, the benevolent glance of God. I want to explore spirituality, connection, recovery, free will. These are big, big, big topics. And it really occurred to me, and I'll let you in on the exact thought process that took place. I was out on a hike with Kia this week. We are absolutely blessed to be at the edge of a piece of land that is private. So it's not shut off from people being able to go on hikes there, like a lot of the state and national, all the federal parks and all of that is closed right now. So we were taking a hike on this land, and it's very, very beautiful. And I was speaking to Kia about a memory I was having. And the memory was from May of 1989. May of 1989. And in May of 1989, I was in severe active cocaine addiction. Smoked cigarettes, smoked pot. I was really in it. And I had been trying to get out of it. But I'd been trying of my own volition, my own will. I was trying to force myself out of addiction into a new way of being. I didn't know how to do it. Now, I had been, at this point, it was my 4th year of college at Boulder, University of Colorado, Boulder. And so I was coming into my final year, right? I was in my final year. What I thought was going to be my final year, let's put it that way. And every year in May, in Boulder, Colorado, there's a very famous foot race, a running race called the Boulder Boulder. And for 4 years running, I had always wanted to do that race. But I just didn't have it together. I never could get my game together to be in shape to do this foot race, which is a 10K. It's 6.2 miles. Or, is that right? I think 6.2, yeah. So I just, each year the excuses would come. You know, I'd be smoking cigarettes, which is obviously not conducive to running. I'd be caught in some kind of drug-related insanity. And I never could get it together. And this was going to be my final year. And here it was again, May. And at the end of May was going to come the Boulder Boulder race. Once again, end of May 89. And at that point, as I said to you, I was really caught in active addiction. But I felt the weight of this race. I knew it was coming. It was in my mind. And I said to myself, I just have to do it. I have to do it. And I kind of, like a deep part of me just said, you have to run this race no matter what shape you're in, no matter what situation, you just have to do it. You can't not do it for all of these 4 years. You've got to do it. And so this incredible pressure was building up inside of me, mentally, emotionally, energetically. And so about a week before the race, 1 week, I started my training, okay? My training was, I'm going to take a very long, strenuous hike every day. That was my training. I'm going to hike up into the mountains for at least 2 hours every day. I'm going to go on a 2-hour strenuous hike. And that was my plan. I knew that I couldn't stop smoking. Though I tried not to smoke until I got my hike out of the way. Because I found that if I smoked cigarettes, for some reason, psychologically for me, I wouldn't go and do the hike. I had never done exercise once I started smoking. So I tried to do all my exercise before I started smoking any given day. Pretty crazy. But I just felt I had to do this. So I started my training and I did it. I did 5 days in a row. And it actually felt a little easier on the 4th and 5th day, a little bit. But I got it done and I was kind of proud of myself, but I was so nervous about doing this running race. So I signed up for the race. I actually, there was a fee. I paid the fee, and there I was. I showed up for the race on the morning of whatever day that was in May, and I intended to run this race. I had always been an athlete, and it had always been one of the biggest losses to me in my life that drug addiction caused me was to lose my physical condition. It was such a painful thing for me to lose that. It was one of the biggest losses of my drug addiction. And so this was, I wanted to live. I didn't want to die from this thing. I wanted to live, and I wanted to live well, and I wanted to do these kinds of things. I wanted to be able to do these kinds of things. And I had no idea that morning if I was going to be able to run 6.2 miles. I had no idea, but I was determined to try. So I think during that week, I had probably drank a bunch, smoked a bunch, but I don't think I did any cocaine, which was really saying something for me at that point. And so I presented myself at the race, the morning of the race. Nobody knew. None of my friends knew that I was doing this. I didn't communicate with anyone. My family didn't know. And by this point, my family was just about to intervene on me, just about to try to get me to go get some help. But I didn't know that. So I ran the race. I completed the race. I remember it hurting, that it was painful, but I got through it. And it doesn't matter what the time was, but somewhere around 50 minutes or 55 minutes, I ran this race. So it's relatively slow, but got it done. And when the race was over, I went back to my little studio sort of apartment where I was very, very much alone in my life. And I called my aunt. I called my aunt because she had been a runner in her life. And she was one of the people in my family that I was always closest with to this day. Someone that I love. She's very much alive and well and with us. And she's just an incredible, incredible being. And I called her on the phone. And I said, I ran this race. And she's like, you're kidding me. I'm like, no, I ran the Boulder Boulder. I'd always wanted to do it. I ran this race. And she said, well, that's just amazing. I'm so proud of you, you know. And we had a little talk, and I could tell she was genuinely proud of me. I had no idea that she was involved in about to intervene upon my drug addiction. And then we hung up the phone, and I turned on the TV to watch the rest of the race. The way the Boulder Boulder was run, at least in those days, was all the amateurs and just regular runners would run. And then the pros would run the race at the end. So I turned on to watch the pros. And I was watching the pros run. And I just broke down crying, bawling my eyes out. And it was about having succeeded at something. Can you not hear me? Should be able to hear me. Okay. It was about having done something, having set out to do something and actually completing it for the first time in God knows how long in my life. It was probably about a lot of the chemicals that were running around my body, the natural chemicals, just from having run this race. I was so devastated about my life and how difficult everything was and how much pain I was in. And I knew inside that me running this race was a symbol. It was my way of declaring to the world, I want to live. I want to live. I want to survive this thing. I want to move beyond it. And so this is the conversation that came up with me and Kia on our hike the other day. Now, I have written and told you guys many times, I think, the story of my friend who died from addiction. We were living together at the very end. After the race in May of 1989, from May until July 25th, was some of the worst drug addiction of my life. And it ended with me going to treatment, thank God, and changing my life forever. But my roommate, who was neck and neck with me in terms of taking drugs, he did not go. He did not go. And he ended up dying. He spent his whole life in drug addiction, in prison, homelessness, and then ultimately he would take his own life. This was about 7 years ago. And I've asked myself for so many years, why does somebody make it? Why does somebody not make it? Is there anything we can do to put ourselves into the favor of the universe? Is there any action we can make? Because what I've heard in religious circles, in many 12-step circles, is there's nothing you can do. That the glance of God, the benevolent glance of God, comes without merit. The grace of God is an undeserved thing. It's just where the universe goes. And I just have to come out and say that never made sense to me. That doesn't make sense to me. And that it flies in the face of deciding to behave any particular way. And so I think that our deepest longing in our heart to love, to surrender, to help, to be alive, to try to become better, to try to be ourself, to learn and to grow. I think our deepest, most heartfelt desire is ultimately what's heard by the universe. And I just think that we can create the conditions for grace to take place. And I believe that grace is always here, always here, and that we can tap into it through our prayer to live, our prayer to love, our prayer to be alive, our prayer to do our best. And we also must recognize in this exploration that, yes, there are things that we can do to put ourselves into the flow, into the universal flow, into the flow and the power of God, into the flow of the quantum field. And there are also things that are beyond our comprehension, definitely. And there are things beyond our scope, things beyond our ability to perceive and see. And those things fall under the heading of the great mystery. And there is a great mystery. And we're in relationship with the great mystery. It doesn't, the two things don't have to be mutually exclusive. We can take actions. We can express our heartfelt desire. And we can also be in the great mystery. If you think about the concept of karma, meaning cause and effect, that there's a cause to every effect. Not just our behavior, but everything in the universe has a cause and an effect. In this visible universe, we live in the world of karma here. That, if I say something kind and it makes you feel good, that brings a beautiful release. And it doesn't bring any kind of negativity, any kind of unfinished business. So there is a cause and there's an effect there. But this is, when we talk about karma, we talk about a cause and effect that leads to unfinished business. Leads to something that still needs to be resolved on some level. Energetically, it's not resolved. And so we think about this idea of grace of God and the benevolent glance of God. Wow, that person's so fortunate, or we're so blessed. Well, we are so blessed. We're blessed because we say we're blessed and because we feel we're blessed and because we show up to learn and to grow with humility. We surrendered at some point in this life. Everybody in recovery, we surrendered. And so there's this idea of, yes, we surrender. We open ourselves up to possibility. We move ego out of the way. You've heard the old acronym, ego, easing God out. If you're agnostic or atheist, you can look at this concept of quantum field, universal flow. Okay, it doesn't have to be any concept of God in particular. But in this idea of karma, when we create pain, or we add to the effects in the world that are unresolved, it eventually has to be resolved in some way, shape, or form. There's accumulated karma there. When we do really wonderful things, it brings immediately a really wonderful feeling. That's a positive effect from a cause. When we do things that are painful, we hurt others. Whether we're aware, conscious or not, on some level, no matter how subtle, we feel that too. And it's painful. And there's a hangover to it. Do we have free will? Of course we do. Of course we can make choices. You can choose left, right, door number 1, door number 2. You can choose to hurt yourself and others, or you can choose not to. This free will is always available to us. It's right here. We've been given a universe in which to play. And we have joys in this universe. We have challenges in this universe. The joys are for us to experience. The challenges are there for us to learn from. Does this make some sense to you, what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'm getting mostly yeses. Okay. So what are we doing? If we understand that we can take actions, we can make choices that lead to positive outcomes or we can make choices that lead to negative outcomes. And the thing that, is challenging for us is this sense of separate self, this ego. Or we just don't know any better. That goes under the heading of ignorance, or we just don't know what we don't know. The first time I put my hand on a hot stove, I learned very quickly that probably not a good, skillful activity. So I never did that again. But before I did that, I really didn't have a full visceral sense of it. But then I did. It became into my consciousness as something that I'm not going to do again. So we make these mistakes in life. We learn from them. We move on to the next mistakes, and we continue to learn in this never-ending evolutionary flow. If we can make good choices or painful choices, and we can learn from our painful choices not to create the same pain again, then everything in our life, then the effort is toward understanding what a good choice is versus what an unskillful choice is. And that's the building of intuition. If we really truly want to create the condition for grace to happen in our life, then we're going to have to do the work of waking up, and we'll also have to do the work of growing up. So the waking up piece is a spiritual path. The growing up piece is more of an emotional path, learning from our emotional state, learning from actions that we take that lead to commotion or pain versus actions that we take that lead to bliss and joy. So the directive for us on a path of recovery from addiction, or just let's just say from making really bad decisions over and over, the directive for us is, let's be on a path together that includes practices, principles, philosophies that build our awareness, that build our intuition, that allow us to see more clearly, and then to make choices from that place. That would be the idea, like we need to do that. So how does that bring us to this moment right now? This is a weird moment, most unusual. The time of tremendous, tremendous uncertainty. The unknown is just right in front of us, taunting us. And if you haven't sort of thought it through, as is always the case, there's no going back. We'll never go back to the world the way it was again. We'll only be moving forward. We'll only be moving forward into the next and into the next and into the next. So any attempt that we might have to try to go back is not going to be skillful. It will be a misunderstanding for a few different reasons. Number one, the world, meaning people in the world, have been in a tremendous state of suffering caused to a great extent by busyness, by stress, inequality, things like war, famine, power dynamics between countries, educational inequity between countries and between social classes within countries, major political problems, obviously not just in the United States, but let's just talk about this country because I'm here. Big problems around health care, major league problems around corporate control. So we've been in a world which has been in tremendous conflict. So when we think about going back, my first question to you or to me would be, why would you want to do that? Why would you possibly want to do that? To go back to a world that's been suffering so badly, that's been hurting so badly? And then when we talk about the planet, which is the planet Earth without the people, the planet has taken a beating from us. And, you know, here's a great, wonderful thing that's taken place as a result of this virus and slowing us all down, and a lot less travel, a lot less oil being consumed and used in automobiles and planes and all the rest of it. I heard a statistic that our air, this was a few days ago, in terms of particulate matter or the health of the atmosphere, has gone up by 36%, or the particulate matter has gone down by 36% around the entire world in just 1 month. This is the greatest thing for the planet. Global warming. I mean, the greatest thing for the planet. It's just so painful for us. Why is it painful for us? We're faced with a health threat. That's very real. People die, or people get infected and die very quickly in large amounts. So, you know, we lost 1,800 people in New York in the last 3 days. That's a lot of people to die from a virus in 3 days. It's painful, and that's 1,800 families that are mourning the loss of somebody. It's unbelievably painful. So there's the very real piece of this, which is that the elderly and the immune compromised folks who get this thing are threatened, and it's frightening. We're scared for our loved ones, and it makes a lot of sense that we should be. Beyond that, this virus presents, as I said, the unknown. It has forced us into stillness. It has forced us out of work to a great extent. Something like, I don't know, 3.5 million people have filed for unemployment in the last 7 days. That's a frightening predicament. The stock market has dropped by whatever, 30, 40% from its peak a month ago, or whenever that was. There's an economic stress point here that we're all facing as well. And so now I'm sitting here and I'm thinking, all right, I'm a person in recovery from addiction. I've been trained to try to understand my part in things. I've been trained to try to think outside the box. I've been trained to look at challenge and try to find the gift in it. Where's the gift in this? If you're in grief right now and you've lost somebody, it is really hard to see the gift in this. And so what I'm about to say, I'm saying from a distant perspective of from the outside looking in. And by the outside, I just simply mean I'm safe. I'm safe today. My loved ones are safe today. It's not that I'm not concerned, but I'm looking from the outside in. And when I look at this thing, I see this virus as something that absolutely had to happen. Something had to happen to slow us down. Something had to stop us in our tracks. Something had to stop the destruction, the busyness, the stress, the sickness, the addiction, and the pain. Something had to give us pause. So to me, in a way, this is God, the universe, the field, doing for us what we could not do for ourselves, what we would not do for ourselves. That amazing things can come from this, ultimately. We will face a lot of pain. We will face a lot of loss. But you know, in my life, in my mind, growing up in the 70s as I did, and then, you know, the horror of nuclear fear, you know, the Cold War and all of that, Reagan and all that stuff that was going on between the US and Russia, and the early and mid and late 80s, and all that insanity really left a print, an imprint on me and everyone in my generation. And so I always assumed, like, I could see, like, okay, we are really putting a hurting on each other and the earth. There's so much inequity. There's so much pollution. We're just hurting the earth, and we're squandering resources, and we're hurting each other. How's this going to end? How are we, where's the revolution going to come from? And I always think about that. Where's the revolution going to come from? And I used to think, because this is how we sort of were trained to think by the media, oh, there's going to be a horrific war. It may not be a nuclear war, but there's going to be a horrific war, and it's going to take out millions and millions and millions of people. Like in the back of our mind, people who grew up when I grew up, we had that in the back of our mind. We thought, my God, anybody with any consciousness, you can't live these last 25 years and not think or not feel this is not working out. We're in a planet with limited resources. Our population is exploding still. This is not working out. Our behavior is not playing out here. So in the back of my mind, I always thought it was going to be a war. And now I see that we don't have to lose millions of people. I see that the virus has shown us a few things. Number one, it's shown us how scared we are to change our routine. But I've heard from so many people, East Coast, Midwest, West Coast, I've heard from so many people who said, I'm closer to my family than I've ever been. I've had more conversations, real conversations with people that I love than I've had in decades. I'm cooking for myself and my family. I took a walk by myself at the ocean, in the forest, on the mountain, down the street, and I had a spiritual experience because things were quiet and things were calm. And the smell of the air in Los Angeles, for me, has completely changed. I am praying that we can curb the spread of this disease as soon as possible, that we lose the least number of people necessary. And I'm praying to God that we don't go back to business as usual. Please, let's not do it. I don't have the answers for sure, but I know that the answers come from our collective, all of us. We're all in this together. We're in it with people who don't share our perspective. We're in it with them too. And they're in it with us. We can't get away from each other in this universe. We're all connected, it turns out. There is a way for us to truly move forward and to be in the grace of God always, and to be in universal flow. And part of that is going to have to come from what we've learned the hard way. Surrender. Ownership of our own behavior. Rigorous honesty. Repairing the damage that we've caused. Building bridges from ourselves to others, even when we don't share the same political or religious or spiritual views. Making amends to people face to face, country to country, city to city, state to state. We already know all of these things because we fell out of grace so far in our addiction that when we found our way back, these were the things that we were told. That there's always grace here. God is not wielding grace for some to have and others not to have. The sunlight of the Spirit spreads over the entire universe equally, if only we can be open to it. Now, when we had our ass kicked by addiction, what were we told we had to do? We have to, first of all, stop. Remove ourselves from the environment of harm. Be around people who could help guide us from that bottom. And in order for that to work, we had to tell the truth. We had to say, okay, I have hurt myself and others badly. It has not worked out. I don't want to continue, but I don't know what to do. Please help me. Is there anyone on this call right now that hasn't said those 3 words at some point? Please help me. So we've been humbled. We've been made receptive. We saw our ego story smashed upon the rocks so that we could pick up a new story. So we learned all these things from being at a bottom after our addiction. And to me, this virus right now, COVID-19, this is a bottom after our addiction as a society. This is our bottom. That means this is a sacred space right now. This is an opportunity. And from this sacred space, we have an opportunity to rise up out of the ashes and to recover. But to do it as a collective, as a community, as a society, we are going to have to adopt rigorous honesty. We're going to have to really and truly surrender. We're going to have to ask for help. Spiritual, yes, that's prayer. Absolutely. I believe in the power of prayer. And we also have to ask for help from people who will guide us from this bottom into ever better places to be. If the people we're looking to for guidance are concerned about being reelected, are concerned about serving corporate interests that help them get elected in the first place, that would be an unskillful place to look for help. This means that we have to open our eyes and say to ourselves, who could really help us from this bottom? Because if we go back to the same places and the same people we've looked to for help to this moment, it's like going to a really bad treatment center with terrible counselors who know nothing about healing addiction, who know nothing about moving out of this darkness and into the light. I don't want to be in a treatment center like that from this bottom. I want the best care available in the world. So I'm looking for people, wise, experienced people in their fields. We need people who are wise, open-minded, and compassionate in the world of medicine. We need to find some solutions there, and those solutions need to be available to everybody, regardless of class or economic status. We want to be in the grace of God. Okay, so let's step into the grace of God and let's solve this problem. We want to find people in science. We want to find people in economics. We want to find people in healthcare. We need to identify true leadership. People who can really, really help us move out of these difficult situations. And we need to help each other as much as we possibly can. This is how we'll serve. This is how we'll serve. Does this make sense to you? All jokes aside about Tommy for president, does this make sense to you? Okay. So my point is this. If it does make sense to you, then let's keep our eyes open. Let's keep thinking along these lines. Because each of us as individuals have a job to do if we really want to be in the grace and in the sunlight of the Spirit and in the flow of the universe. Is we are going to have to ask ourselves the hard questions like I'm trying to do every day and I'm doing right this minute. How have I contributed to this? How have I contributed to stress in my own life or anybody else's? How have I contributed to busyness in my own life or anybody else's? I recognize that everybody has done some good and everybody has probably done some things that created harm. We're human beings, but we want to ask ourselves the hard questions so that we can move forward into a more conscious way of being. I can tell you this right now, Recovery 2.0 will never be the same again. It can't be. I'm never going to be the same again. You're never going to be the same again. And the way that we've been doing things, while beautiful and helpful to so many, even this is going to need an upgrade too. And so we're looking to that upgrade always, because every one of us is involved. And the minute I say, oh, it's all them, they have to change. No, it's on them. If they do the change, then finally we'll all wake up. No. That isn't going to work. So we have a moment of opportunity here. My strongest suggestions for this time: please stay away as much as you can from mainstream media. Try to source information from people who have some equanimity, some wisdom. Try to find your own center every day. Please stay on your practice, your sadhana practice. There's so many practices available to you. And as you all know, we now have the 14-day challenge. You can do that over and over again. And we've got many, many other things coming up. Tend to the fundamentals. Eat well. Hydrate yourself. If you feel yourself getting a little sick, don't panic. Do all the things that you normally would do to take care of yourself. And most importantly, here are the two things that any of us can do to boost our immune system immediately. Two things: sleep, hydrate. Sleep, hydrate. We need our sleep. The cells of our body operate well when they're well rested and well hydrated. So those are two things that we can for sure do. Take care of the fundamentals and take care of each other. Now let's orient ourselves towards service. Let's orient ourselves towards service. If we can ask this question, and Heidi put it right in here: how can I help? How can I help? It doesn't mean we deplete ourselves. Let me give you an example of that. I have a very dear friend who's a doctor in New York City. He's really a wise and experienced surgeon. And he knows right now that he could check in and present himself on the front lines of this struggle and start dealing with the death and the disease as it's coming in. And he can lend a hand in that capacity. But he also has a wife and 4 children. And if he leaves and he goes down there, he can't come back for a long time, maybe a few months. And so in investigating his own heart, he recognizes that his duty, his place in the world, is with his family right now. That's where he needs to be. And he can help and he can consult in many, many, many other ways. It would be the wrong choice for him to present himself in that other theater, in that other venue. That would be a depleting choice, not a wise choice. Each of us is going to have those choices of how we can help. So we make the choices that are right for us. We do the best that we can, and we're always in the mindset of how can I help? Now, if we do that as individuals, and everybody, if this catches on, this is going to become contagious, as it always is, then in greater and greater numbers, we're moving forward along an evolutionary path that leads to the support, the love, the compassion, and the care for all people. And the cynical part of our mind wants to say, it won't happen. The less cynical part of our mind will say, well, it might happen, but it won't happen in our lifetime. And then the accurate part of our mind says, well, who knows? We don't know what can happen. Because I can tell you what, 1 month ago, nobody thought this would be happening. And what if as a result of this, we changed our life and our society forever for the better? And what if we lost much less life than we had predicted we were going to lose? And what if we avoided that big war where we were going to lose millions of people? And what if we turned the ship around and we started to care for the planet Earth and people the way that we really always have known in our heart was the way it ought to be? I just feel this is the moment for that. The grace of God is right here in front of you. It's right here in front of me. It's right here in front of everybody. If you have lost somebody close to you, I am with you in solidarity in the pain and the grief of that. I understand. I have lost so many people. I've lost so many people to addiction. And that's another virus, right? And there are people dying every day, and we understand that this is an incredibly painful time for so many. We hold them in our heart and in our mind. And we know that the people who have passed away, who have moved on, who have made that transition, their unfoldment continues even now. And we have to remember that. And we have to not be drawn down into despair. We have to say our prayers and keep on our practices and keep up. And remember that the grace of God is always available to any of us. Agnostic, atheist, spiritual, religious, whatever it is, that what's happening here is part of the collective. This virus sits in a circle with all of us as well. It also is part of the collective. And you can't outrun it. And all we can do now is do what we know we need to do to stem the spread. Embrace all of it. Hold space for all of it. Do our practices. Do what we need to do to support each other. Stay sober for sure. Stay on the path of recovery. And do the things that we always need to do to move ourselves into the light, into the sunlight of the Spirit, out of the darkness of addiction and stuckness. So these are the things that occur to me at this point in time. I'm not flippant about this virus. I don't like that this happened. But I do recognize that this could be that turning point we've been waiting for, which could turn out to be a much less destructive turning point than other ones that might have happened. So I'm staying in that mindset. I'm looking at this as a movement toward ultimately something positive, while holding space for all the people who are grieving and who are frightened and scared in this time. So that's the deal. If I can field any questions, please drop them right now in the Q&A feature on this Zoom portal. Right at the bottom of the main is a Q&A button. I'm going to click on it now. There's one question in there. Please feel free. Okay, so this question from a gentleman here. You spoke about people saying sober by the grace of God in the rooms. I agree that this can come across as slightly self-congratulatory and self-aggrandizing. Perhaps, though, the grace of God is more about the beautiful abundance from which we can heal. The 12 steps, other recovery modalities, nature, prayer, food. Perhaps the grace of God is the fact that these things exist. We can choose to get in the boat doesn't choose us. What do I think? What do you think? What do I think is I think that's genius. I think you covered it. I think that's beautiful. We can make these choices to get in the boat or be unfortunate and not get in the boat. We can be in the presence of modalities that heal us, or we can keep at a distance from them. We can come closer to each other, at this point, figuratively speaking, in our heart and soul, or we can stay isolated, scared, and alone. And I think that these are choices of ours. I think those are precisely the choices that we can make to enter into the field, that universal flow, what I'm calling the grace of God for this call. And I think you really nailed it. Thank you so much for that. Okay. Polly is saying, any recommendations on media sources? Thank you for that question. What a wonderful question. So here's what I'm doing. There are a couple of podcasts out there that I've noticed lately are having some pretty incredible people come on the podcast who are people in positions of true authority, who really understand the situation and have a lot of experience behind them. My shout out to Joe Rogan on his podcast. He's had a couple people that have been really amazing lately that have helped bring some clarity to this. So I'm looking at some of the top podcasts, and I'm looking at who the guests are. I'm not interested in speaking with people or hearing from people who have something to say but not too much experience. I'm looking for people who really understand health, healing, spirituality, recovery, public health, people who have solutions. I want to stay away from anything divisive. I want to stay away from any argument. I don't get into argument, especially not at this point in time. I don't want to be around it. This is the wrong time for us to be arguing. Even people, and I'm going to say this publicly, even people who are trashing the shit out of our president right now, I don't even want to be around that. We're all clear that he's made mistakes, that he's not who we wanted, to be in that office, and that there's a real shortfall there. And I got to tell you what, I listened to him speak the other day, and I actually heard some surrender in his voice. I actually heard some fear in his voice. I actually heard some humanity in his voice. Still not the man that I necessarily would choose, but the point is, let's give everybody a break, because Lord knows this, whether you like him or not, you want him to succeed right now. We really need our leaders to succeed right now, so let's get out of the argument game. One place, Polly, that's very, 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 very important. I'm listening to Bill Gates. Bill Gates just pledged billions of dollars to move us towards a vaccine. Everything that guy's getting involved in seems meticulously well thought out, super educated, has spoken to the leaders of the leaders, the best of the best. These are people who put their mind towards solutions. So when you're watching any media source, ask yourself, are these people interested in creating fear in me? Are they drumming up a sense of fear? Are they showing me a lot of charts about how terrible it's going to be and all the death and everything that's about to happen? Or are they focused on solutions? Are they focused on trying to find positive ways through this time? Those are the people that we want to be around. It's pretty incredible. So I hope that answers your question to some small extent. It's if nothing, it's a guideline for the types of media that I feel I would want to be around right now. And so stay on the positive, stay on the solution side of things. Linda is asking how best to act with family and friends who are so negative or fearful or complaining all the time. Question, do I just listen to them? You can give yourself space if you're able. Even if you have to walk away and go into a room for a little while and meditate. You can also introduce meditation, and it'll achieve a couple things. Number one, it's going to ultimately calm everybody's mind. It's going to calm the emotions. But the person who is in victim, the person who is in negativity, the person who is in, really a lot of fear, it's also going to get them to be quiet. And that's very important, not just for your well-being. It's very important for their well-being. Because when they get quiet, what happens is they're going to have a chance to look at their own thinking for a minute without saying anything. It's going to give the most slight pause between what they think and what they say. Because at least for that 5-minute meditation, they're going to be quiet. And you'll find a great shift in the room if you're able to get them to do this. If they're not the type who are going to do that and they're not going to be able to be quiet right now, distance yourself, take a break. And also make sure you let them know, I hear how difficult this is. I'm aware of how difficult this is, and I'm with you. I'm with you. I love you. I love you, and we'll get through this. Just stay on the positive, the best that you can. We'll get through this, Next question here. Do you know what you're personally planning on change? Do I know what I'm going to change? Oh, in my own life? Well, it's unfolding every day. I'll tell you one thing I'm going to change. I am realizing that I try to do too much in my day-to-day. And it isn't skillful. I can really learn from that. that I'll be much more effective and much more pleasant and much more content to do fewer things well. And if there's something, anything that I feel moving me towards stress, even if it feels important, I myself will stop and say, Tommy, take a minute here. Take a minute here. It's more important that you maintain a clear mind than it is that you move towards something that carries you into stress and negativity. So that's a massive, massive lesson for me. And if that's my takeaway from the virus, fantastic learning for me. So that's an example. There are many other things in terms of the way I structure my day. I'm learning things about that. The way I'm preparing food, even everything is shifting in a more healthful, more slow, more beautiful way. So the big message for all of us is slow down. And I'm really taking that to heart. Next question here. Could you make this talk available to more than just us? Yes, is the answer. Absolutely. We'll make it available to everybody. We'll put it up on YouTube, or we'll find a page and we'll get everyone the link. Let's see here. Are there other spiritual leaders who you'd recommend we listen to as well? Absolutely. Thank you so much for asking this question. Spiritual leaders who are good resources and ideas to support this movement. Okay. Number one, I'd like you to look up the head of an ashram in India, one of my most revered teachers and one of the most incredible people that walk this planet. I'm going to put his name in there. His name is Swami Chidanand. Let me put it here. 1 second. I'll put it right in there for you to everybody. Swami Chidanand Saraswathi. Okay. He's an Indian man. There it is. His name is right in the chat bar right now. He's an Indian man. He runs the Parmarth, I'm going to put it in there, Niketan Ashram in India. If you Google either of those, you're also going to come upon a third person, a second person, and a third Google entry. Her name is Sadhvi, S-A-D-H-V-I, Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati. Okay? Swami Chidanand Saraswati and Sadhvi Bhagawati Saraswati are two of the most wise and incredible people, in my opinion, alive today. You can get on their newsletters. They send out Meditation Mondays, I believe, and Wisdom Wednesdays. Two newsletters that absolutely lift my spirits and inform me and help me know about other wonderful things that are taking place in the world. So those are two. I also want to point out the wonderful teachings of Anand Mehrotra. Anand Mehrotra, M-E-H-R-O-T-R-A. If you look up his Sattva Yoga, you'll also find some amazing resources there. Some of his beautiful wisdom talks, which are called satsangs. And that's a treasure trove of information. Also, very recently, Deepak Chopra released one of the most beautiful and informative videos about this time right now. It's called Entangled Mind, Entangled Body, Entangled World, or something like that. I think Stacy might have that information and she can put it in the chat feed. Otherwise, you can Google it and find that. So these are some of the resources available to us right now. And I'm constantly reading, constantly listening to uplifting spiritual content. Yet another wonderful spiritual leader, Sadhguru. If you're not familiar with him, look him up. He's got such wonderful wisdom and such important guidance for this time as well. And so there you go. I hope that answers some of those questions and be helpful to you. Okay. How do we convince others that there is abundance when there will likely be a fight over limited resources because of a sense of fairness or entitlement? Okay. We live in an abundant universe. Absolutely. We live in an abundant universe. Our thinking, our unconsciousness makes it appear as if it's not. The effort that we have to make is to bring ourselves to greater consciousness and awareness. If we're doing that work, we will come into the abundance of this moment. For example, the world still, the nature, the natural world still replenishes itself. It still repairs itself. It does. There's more than enough food on this planet to feed everybody on this planet. It's only our unconsciousness, our boundaries, our wars, our power play, our control that prevents the abundance that is here from fully showing itself and expressing itself. If somebody wants to argue these facts, that's okay. Let them. But you don't have to get into debate over it. What you can do instead is live abundantly. To live abundantly does not mean to live extravagantly. Quite the opposite. Abundance is a mindset. It's, I have everything I need. I don't need anything more. This infinite present moment, this infinite now, is always been here and it's always been abundant. Except for when the ego gets in the way and makes you think that you need something that you don't need, that you don't have. Now, the basics of life, we all need food and water, shelter, love. There's more than enough food, water, shelter, and love on this planet for everybody, if only we could get our consciousness game together and start thinking about the collective rather than thinking about ourselves or our interest or our country's interest or our community's interests. If we haven't figured it out, this is a world of people. And the way we behave affects everybody else. The way everybody else behaves affects us. And the sooner we get this understanding that we're going to have to work together, that we're going to have to build bridges between people, the sooner we can actually move into this great place. Okay, last two here. My 86-year-old father says, why would anybody want to meditate? But I will try that. Okay, so the reason why people would want to meditate is because without meditation, we ultimately are less comfortable, less happy, more destructive, more violent, more unconscious people. Directly, I could just simply say, if you stop for a minute and you close your eyes and you just take a few breaths without feeling the need to do anything, even that right there is a comforting experience, though it might not be for someone who has spent 86 years never doing that. It might be a little uncomfortable at first, but with the right direction and the right instruction, you can teach him to get down into his lungs, to feel his breath coming in and out. And what you'd be doing is, let's hope your father lives for, say, another 86 years. That's my hope. So he's 172 when he decides consciously to make a transition from this planet. So between now and whenever that is, let's hope that he has a moment of quiet and contentment, and that connection, that divine, beautiful connection with himself and the divine within him, that he can make that connection and be in that light, that illumination and that unbelievable light, that he can experience what it is to die from the ego before the body has to die. And if he can do that, he will have realized the purpose of all of our lives. And so that's one reason. And then finally, last one. In my first 10 months of recovery and during my morning sadhana, have been feeling a desperate need for a mantra other than Om or Om Shanti. Can you recommend one for these challenging times? Wow. Well, there's just so many. My goodness. God, where do I even begin here? So there are so many beautiful mantras in so many different traditions. Some of them you might need to learn. If you want a really, really simple one, you can just go with so hum. So hum. S-O-H-U-M. Very powerful. What you do is you close the eyes and you sit up tall so your spine is straight. Bring the thumb and forefinger together and just sit tall. As you inhale, in your mind, mentally vibrating the sound of so. On the exhale, in the mind, mentally vibrating the sound of hum. So hum. Stay there. Set the alarm for 11 minutes. Start with an 11-minute meditation. Simply draw all your attention to the mantra. Inhaling so, exhaling hum. Try that. 11 minutes every day. Go for 40 days. And then get back to me and let me know how it was. When your mind wanders away from the mantra, just bring it back to the mantra. No judgment, no analysis, nothing right, nothing wrong. Just be there. So and hum. So hum means I am that, meaning I am connected to all. I am that. I am that, connected to everything in the universe. Go with that for a little while. Okay, you guys. So that's good for now. I want to thank you for joining me tonight. I'm sending love to everyone here, love to the greater Recovery 2.0 community. I do want you to know that in about 3 weeks, we're going to be launching our Recovery 2.0 coaching program. It is called the 8-Week Awakening. It's going to be very, very special experience. I'm hoping that you all will join me. And you'll see that there's going to be some very unusual approaches to how we invite everybody into this thing, since this is a very unusual time. So you'll be hearing about that, and stay on your recovery path. Ask for help if you ever need it. And don't despair. Don't despair. There's a way through every block. There's definitely a way through this. Love you so much. Satnam. Oh, thank you, Tandy. Forgot our prayer. Forgot the Recovery 2.0 prayer. Here we go. Inhale to begin. Universe, put me in the places you want me to be, with the people you want me to be with, doing the things you want me to do. Thank you for the joys and challenges of my life. Amen. And Satnam. I want to make sure you all understand that I'm teaching yoga and recovery class every morning at 8:30 a.m. Pacific time, every morning. Please come and join me in class and bring somebody with you. This is how we get through these times with grace, with strength, and with some modicum of elegance. So come join. There you go. There's a link in the chat bar right here for where you can join our yoga classes every morning. It's r20.com/yoga today. See you guys soon.